Namaskar. Welcome to Prakash on Basics. I am Prakash Zog. From the Vedic period to the Pauranik Dharma time, around 1000 years would have passed away. So naturally there was a major shift in the social, cultural, religious norms. Old concepts were seen in new light. Many new concepts were also introduced. In the Vedic period, the yajnas dominated. They were the way to God, they were the way to success, they were the way to all achievements, for all merits, punya as it is known. There were obviously some restrictions that I had talked of long back. It was restricted to the first three classes, and the later ones always found a resource crunch. Availability of time was a problem. Somras itself was a problem. So simple, practical, pragmatic alternatives were provided by the Pauranik Dharma. I have mentioned about these last time to some extent. There are many new concepts. Today I will explain two of them. The first is now a rarely talked of word known as Apoorva. The reason is that it is now reinterpreted in terms of many a times by people in terms of punya and its counterpart, which is pap, merits and demerits, religious, as something that we could talk of. As I said, in the Vedic period the yajnas dominated, whether it was for individual person or collective, and it was one of the ways of reaching heaven. To attain 𝘗𝘰𝘰𝘰𝘰, yajna was a major part, and that was one of the major objectives of the yajnas also. But if you think carefully, that is an uncertain goal, unseen but promised, something that we need not really observe directly. Actually, in most yajnas there is a part known as phalashruti. The gains from the yajna are enumerated, and some of these were promised outcomes in the afterlife, and that is something that nobody can verify and nobody can be sure of. So the concept of Apoorva was introduced. The word Apoorva means unprecedented. So what you did not have before the yajna, you gained by performing the yajna. It was more like what people talk of as merit points, but these were religious ones, or more like a bank balance. Karmakanda was a major issue of all Vedic period, and yajnas were a part of Karmakanda. But for every karma or activity, there is an expectation that you should get something, some outcome, some fruit, and that is the phala prapti. But if that is not immediate or is unclear, then the performer does not know what he has gained and what he is to expect, something that he cannot visualize. And so the word was also known as adrushta, which means unvisualized. So when you perform a yajna, what you do is really collect Apoorva, And this collection of Apoorva also implies two things. One, that you have gained something after a perfect yajna, but there is no hurry to see what the outcome is. It is more like a bank balance that you have collected in the form of Apoorva, and that will ensure that you reach Swarga or heaven. Later on, this word Apoorva seems to have been replaced by what is known as Punya Sanchaya. Punya is religious merit and Sanchaya is accumulation, and that is what it really boils down to. It had naturally a counterpart of bad behavior or religious demerits, which are typically what pap is. So, punya and pap are two words that were always associated with every behavior or karma of a human being. And this was a concept that was accepted even by the other religions, the Jains and the Buddhists, as I have discussed sometime a few months back. And naturally, in the Pauranik Dharma, a god was assigned to keep track of this balance of pap and punya for an individual, and he was Chitragupta. Chitragupta confirmed that your accumulated punya was greater than pap before admitting the jeev or atma to Swarga or heaven. And when your Apoorva was exhausted, you had to take a rebirth once more. So, this is first of the major concepts which got modified, as I said, in more in terms of pap and punya. The second alternative to yajna is the second concept that I am going to talk of. It is Teerth Yatra. Teerth is the holy site, and Teerth Yatra is pilgrimage to this holy site. The original word Teerth is something that I had explained long back, but I will just remind what it is. Originally, it deals with the crossing point of a river where there is perennial water, and so naturally there is a development on either sides on the banks of such crossing points. Trade develops, the sites become more important, and so they develop into what are typically preaching sites and development points of temples, and these were originally referred to as Teerth. And this concept was utilized not only by the Hindus, but also the Jains and the Buddhists in the later period. And this Teerth or the holy place has its relevance explained in the Puranas, but there is a better reference in the epic Mahabharata. There is a dialogue between Bhishma, the great old sage, and Pulatsya. This is in the Shanti Parva. Pulatsya tells Bhishma that those who cannot afford or are incapable or do not have the right to perform a yajna can gain equal merit or punya through a Teerth Yatra. A Teerth Yatra gives the same punya as a Ashwamedh Yajna, and there is a reason that he talks of also. He says gods not only appear at the yajnas to consume the havi or the offerings made to them, but they also remain present at these Teertha Kshetras. Actually, if you think logically, these Teerthas originally were at river crossing points, but they were also at major mountain passes. They were also at places of geographical importance. Naturally, economic development led to cultural development, to religious interpretations, and naturally religious activity, religious interaction increased at these points. Some of these were associated with ancient legends or with saints. Rameshwar, for example, is where Ram performed his yajna or offerings or worship to Shiva, or Ayodhya, the birthplace of Ram, or Mathura, the place of Krishna, or Gangapur, which is a place for a saint. Some locations were natural wonders also, and these were believed to be abode of gods. Kailas, for example, and Amarnath, a cave up in the Himalayas where gradually there is a rising and a growing Shivalinga, purely made out of ice, which gradually reduces and increases. And Indians believe in looking for gods in every possible place and every possible direction. So they found God there also. And then Gangotri, which is the source of Ganga as it is believed, but it is nothing but a melting point of a glacier. There were also places that were sanctified by the presence of specific gods and goddesses, and these were visited by their corresponding sects and people. Ashtavinayak, for example, the 12 Jyotirlingas, the Shaktipeeths, and so many others. Realize that rivers and river confluences were also sites of these Teerthas. Special auspicious gatherings took place at these places. Ganga, Prayag, Godavari, and I am sure most of us know of the Kumbh Mela, the biggest human gathering in the world that takes place at special parva or specific occasions. The Ardha Kumbh and the Kumbh, which takes place after 6 and 12 years. Rivers gained a lot of importance, and depositing the mortal remains after cremation at river confluences became a ritual for all Hindus post the Pauranik Dharma, and this process is referred to as Asti Visarjan, the deposition of the remaining bones into a confluence of a river. How many of these sites are there? One of the earliest Bharat Ratna recipients, P.V. Kane, whose treatise on Dharma Shastra gave him the Bharat Ratna. He identifies more than 4,000 locations where puja, prayers resulted into accumulation of punya. The information of these sites and their locations is scattered throughout the Puranas and also in the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata, and the presence there increases their importance and popularity. Their holiness also seems to grow, their sanctity seems to grow as people keep visiting these places even today. Many tales, relevant details, descriptions, references are given in the Puranas of all these Teerthas and Teertha Kshetras. These were then passed on by singers and bards, or what are known as pravachanakas, those who gave sermons and explained religious information to the common people in temples. And these tales are quite fabulous many a times. I just remind you of one or two. The Shakti Peeth are the sites which are said to be 51. Sometimes in Devi Bhagwat or other places they are referred to as 64 also. And it goes back to the tale of Daksha, who performed a yajna and did not invite his daughter Sati, who was married to Shiva. She still felt she could go and visit her father's yajna. So she landed up uninvited, and Daksha insulted her. Saddened by this, she jumped into the yajna and gave herself up. Shiva, on hearing this, came to the yajna site, beheaded Daksha, and lamented over the death of Sati. He performed the Tandav Nritya and moved around with her body. The whole world trembled, as it was said, and there was no solution to his anger and lament. So Vishnu, with his Sudarshan Chakra, decapitated the body of Sati into 51 pieces that fell at different sites wherever we move around in this subcontinent. And each site is now a Shakti Peeth, a center, a powerhouse of energy. 7 of them are in Bangladesh, 3 in Pakistan, 3 in Nepal, 1 in Tibet, Lanka and Bhutan also. The rest obviously are in India, many of them in Bengal, scattered right from the top to the bottom. Nayana Devi, Tripur Sundari, Kamakhya, Chamundeshwari, Vani. I have had the pleasure to visit 11 of them, and that has been a great honor. There are also other sites which are equally important, and these are origins of locations where rivers begin, or places like Pushkar, or sites like Mahalakshmi and Vani, which is on top of a mountain, or Amarkant, or Kanyakumari. All these are locations which are treated as a part and parcel of the Teerth, and Indians with full fervor even visit these Teertha Kshetras today with all possible difficulties. Narmada Parikrama is one of them. The 12 Jyotirlinga visits are also a part of it. The Ashtavinayaks are a part of it. All this is a gift that has come from the Pauranik Dharma. If you have liked whatever I have said, please pass on this information to your friends also. Do go on a yatra or a pilgrimage of this sort. Visit some of these sites. They are wonders to watch. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Until I come back after a fortnight for some more major concepts that were introduced by the Pauranik Dharma. Till that time, Namaskar.